everybody. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, that's the picture. The day after I wore those boots, and it was in the newspaper, I was at a luncheon, and Jerry Nadal from Cirque du Soleil introduced me at this lunch, and he said, you know, yesterday Myron made two simultaneous announcements. He announced that Kinky Boots was coming to Las Vegas, and he announced that he won't be running for governor. So tonight, I'm here to tell you I'm running for governor just to piss off Jerry Nadal. So Andy said, tell everybody something you don't know. And I guess I need to start with a couple of things you should know. I mean, I started out as just a normal kid who liked cake. I grew up a little bit. I was an entertainer from this big. And I was kind of proud of the fact that I could do what they did at Six Flags. Now, hold this picture for just a second. I'd gone to Six Flags over Texas, and I'd seen the show that they had. It was a country western show. And I got home, and I wanted to replicate what I'd just seen on stage, and the guys were all wearing chaps. So I borrowed my mom's dish rags. Those were my chaps. And I was proud to be a little Texan, too, and you can see in that photo. So a couple things that you do know about me. You know that I'm living my dream to design, build, and operate what Polestar magazine just called the 8th greatest performing arts center in the world. Makes me very, very happy. I had another love, some of you know, and that's baseball. And I know you probably know this too, but I was fortunate to play one season for the Texas Rangers and, of course, 2 seasons for the Atlanta Braves. I know, you're looking at me like, well, what did you play? I played the organ for all 3 seasons. Thank you. So as I started thinking about all the things that you may not know about me, at least all those that I can tell you have a lot in common. And each one of these things kind of prepared me for the next. And some of you may say it's coincidence, or maybe it's luck, or maybe it's just chance that one thing led to the next. But I kind of feel like I've had a guardian angel, and otherwise, how else would you explain that my dad came home one day with a Hammond organ. I was about that tall. He brought it because he thought it'd be fun, and he was really into music, and I learned to play, and then I took some lessons, and then went to music school, and then I started winning all the talent shows, and that led to a career in the music business. Led me to New York City, where I worked with 200 extraordinary people like Billy Joel and Bruce Hornsby. It was in New York City that I met a guy that became one of my best friends, and that's Clint Holmes, back when he had his show New York at Night. That's also the place where I met a guy named Liberace when I was in New York. I sat on his board of directors. He started a foundation, and it was Liberace that brought me to Las Vegas. So you see, all these things, one led to the next. Everybody knows who Liberace is, right? Okay. Liberace's the guy that said, too much of a good thing is wonderful. That guy? All right, so I'm going to tell you a story that I've never told anybody. Clint's never heard this. Nobody has heard this story. Turn off the cameras. Cats, put away your notepad. This is a true story. So I moved to Las Vegas for Liberace to run the museum and the foundation. When I got there as the executive director, my job was to make sure that it was run like a business. So I started going through all the financials, and I kept noticing that month after month, our phone bills were like incredible. And I looked a little closer, and I found out that we had 800 numbers for people to call in to the Liberace Museum. Well, no one was using these 800 numbers, but we were spending a fortune. The number for the Liberace Foundation and Museum was 1-800-626-2625. I remember it. So I'm at a point where I'm ready to get rid of this phone number. It's costing way too much money, and the phone rings. And this lady on the other end says, listen, I'm interested in buying your 800 number because 626-2625 spells out my company name. And I said, oh, that's really great. And she said, yeah, and if you'd give me the phone number, I'll make a donation to the Liberace Foundation for $1,000. And without asking any questions, which I should have, I said, well, of course, it's sold. Send me the check and we'll sign it over. 2 weeks later, a grandmother of someone who worked at the Liberace Museum called the 800 number to talk to her granddaughter. And boy, was she shocked. Now, I've never told this story. Nobody knows this. Thank God it's late night, and I'm so glad that you're all in the entertainment business because this is true. She called. It wasn't the Liberace Museum. It was gay porn. It was gay porn. So get this. True story. Now, I'm telling you some of my coincidences. This is Liberace's coincidence. If you look up 1-800-626-2625 and look at what the letters spell, it's 1-800-MANCOCK. I am not kidding you. Coincidence? Yes. So that's Liberace's coincidence. Back to my coincidences. None of them have been an accident. That time I was in New York City led me to judging the Miss America pageant. In fact, I think I'm the only guy that's been invited back to judge it 3 times. And that led me to judging the state pageants around the country, one of which was Texas, my home state. And I sat next, thank you, sat next to one of the other judges, a former Miss Texas, and by the end of the week, we decided we were going to get married. So if I hadn't gone to New York, you get the idea. All right, so the serious stuff. The Smith Center, when we got involved about 20 years ago, was the impossible dream. To raise $470 million in the entertainment capital of the world in the worst possible economic time in our city's history. Everyone said it is impossible. Even the people that wanted us to build this place said, there's no way in hell you're going to raise that kind of money. But we had hope because we knew that this was something really special that would change our community. So is it a coincidence that Mayor Goodman, Oscar Goodman, invited Don Snyder and I to go with him on a trip to West Palm Beach, Florida? Is it a coincidence? I don't know. Because you see, what he wanted us to see was a new development that the related companies, his developer, had put together in West Palm Beach. Because he thought that might be a good model for the 61 acres we now call Symphony Park. Well, what he didn't know at the time is the reason why that thing was built was because just across the street, they had built a world-class performing arts center in what had been the worst neighborhood in all of Palm Beach. It transformed the city, and it made it possible for this development. So we go on the trip. In the morning, we tour the development. We go to lunch, and after, we go to the Kravis Center for the Performing Arts. And we're sitting kind of right in here as the lady that runs the place was standing, giving us the tour and talking about the place. And Oscar is kind of looking around, and I see him not listening, but really studying the room. And at one point, he leans over and he says, so is this what we're going to build? He'd been our best cheerleader. I mean, every chance he could get in front of a group of people, he'd say, we're the largest community in North America without a world-class performing arts center. We need to change it. So I said, well, yeah, Mayor, something like this. And my mayor, Oscar Goodman, says, holy shit, we got to have one of these. I wish he were here. So was it dumb luck that that Tony Hsieh made a significant gift to the Smith Center to make it possible? It might have been, but I had this little voice in my head as we were taking a hard hat tour. And we were in the first box, closest to the stage, house right, still under construction, wearing hard hats. And we stopped there for a minute, and the voice in my head said, you know, Tony, in San Francisco, where you come from, they call this the Pretty Woman box. I said, you know that movie, Pretty Woman? He says, oh my God, it's my favorite movie of all time. Don't you love it when Julia Roberts is wearing the red dress and like she had the opera glasses and they're blah, 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 and he's going on and on and on. I couldn't believe it. I had no idea that that was his favorite movie. No idea. And I said, well, you know, Tony, in San Francisco, you can't put your name on the Pretty Woman box. But in Las Vegas, you can. Right? So he said how much. I told him, and he wired the money the very next day. So thank you, Tony Hsieh. All right, so all these coincidences. Fred Smith, Mr. Smith walked to the podium as he announced the first $50 million gift that the Reynolds Foundation made. By the way, the $50 million gift grew to over $200 million. But he walked to the podium and he said, you know, when Don and Myron first talked to me about this Performing Arts Center, I'll be honest with you, I had no idea what they were talking about. He said, my idea of a Performing Arts Center was a beer joint where you heard Willie Nelson. And he meant it. So a couple of days later, he called me and he said, yeah, I'm really serious about learning more about this. Would you take me on a trip so I can see a Performing Arts Center or two? And we did. We went to the Orange County Performing Arts Center and we were heading to the LA Music Center and the Walt Disney Concert Hall when that little voice in my head said, Walt Disney, that little voice in my head said, maybe we should stop in Cerritos, it's on the way. And I called my friend and I said, would you mind if I brought some friends for a quick tour? And he said, well, of course, please come, but we've got a bunch of school buses about to arrive for a school time performance. And I said, that's even better, we're on our way. And we pulled up just as the buses did. We got out of our cars, stood on the sidewalk, and saw all these kids with these smiling faces, really excited to be there. And Mr. Smith said, I get it. This isn't about architecture. It's about those kids, and it's about inspiring people of all ages who live in our great city. He was right. So Mary Smith passed away before we opened, but there's an image of iris flowers. If you look real carefully at that, as you walk through the Smith Center next time, you'll see iris flowers, her favorite thing in the world, throughout our building. Our address is 361 Symphony Park Avenue. Mr. and Mrs. Smith were married in the 3rd month of 1961, 361. Way too many coincidences. So here's the last coincidence. I worried about everything during design and construction. And I knew that Fremont Street had this terrible problem with pigeons. So I started worrying about pigeons. Because we had lots of windows, 300 and something windows. What am I going to do with all the pigeons? Well, this is when the bell tower was being finished. And about the time that it was completed, a pair of peregrine falcons made their nest on the top of the tower. We had nothing to do with it. And we had no problems with pigeons. Other than clean up on aisle 12 every once in a while. But so as I put all these coincidences together, makes me realize how lucky I am to have friends like you, how lucky I am to have all of these coincidences happen in my life. I know that there are angels looking down, including Mrs. Smith. You see, Fred Smith and I were walking backstage with Don Snyder on opening night of the Smith Center. And I could tell that he got a little quiet, and I said, are you all right? He said, oh, I'm better than all right. He said, that song they're playing, John Fogerty is on stage, and that was Mary's favorite song. And I listened, and we didn't plan it this way, but John Fogerty was singing Proud Mary. So those are our coincidences. I hope that all of you have that kind of hope, that kind of luck, coincidences in your life, And I hope every once in a while you'll see one of those angels looking down with you as well. So thanks for having me.